Off. I feel powerful just saying it. It's always been an enigma of a game to me. It seems to be pretty highly reviewed amongst parts of the indie community. People love this game. I remember playing it a long time ago and I thought it was pretty good, but I can only really remember bits and pieces of it. But I guess I'm revisiting it today with more of a question in mind. What is it about Off that people love? The characters? The story? The world? Dare I even say, the gameplay? In fact, when I think about it overall, just what was Off all about? Y'all remember when I had an intro for my channel? Maybe I should bring it back sometime. It was kinda silly. Off was released in 2008 by a group known as Unproductive Fun Time. I suppose most notable to the creation of Off would be that of Mondes, a cartoonist who made this game back when he was in high school. Off is a French role-playing game where the player takes control of a character known as the Batter, a man in a baseball uniform with the appropriate bat, as he goes through several zones with the mission of purifying them by killing these specter enemies causing trouble within them, along the way meeting several characters that people have really grown to love. As loved as Off is, it probably wouldn't be as well known if it wasn't for the likes of Quinn K, who translated the game. Funnily enough, Quinn K is also working on An Outcry, a game that I've been told to look at. Small world. And before we go in, I have to say the translation for this game is fantastic. I mean, I can't say that in a way that's accurate, I don't speak French, but the way that the characters talk, everyone has a poetic way of talking, and not in the way that comes off as obnoxious. I actually enjoy reading this text. This follows suit to the RPG aspects of this game, almost to a nonsensical degree. You'll be equipping things such as days of the week, auras of a certain emotional state. You'll learn attacks based off things such as code, while simultaneously being attacked by the likes of monsters with these strange names. It almost feels like playing a randomizer where the text gets all jumbled out but still comes out making words that you can read. I was wondering if the original French translation was like this too, but if there's one thing I remembered about Off, is that there is a fight theme known as Minuit et Fond la Casse, which translates to Midnight at High Speed. God, that's a cool title. So needless to say, Off was probably always like this. Speaking of which, let's talk about the music and the visuals. Visuals are kind of the stuff I don't talk about a lot when it comes to my videos. That's because your game looks like trash, Spacey. Yeah, thanks. But I'd be mistaken to not talk about the visuals of Off. It's very sketchy and stylized. The character art really stands out, and while the sprites in the overworld seem relatively clean, the battle sprites are where things get really creative. You fight some interesting monsters in terms of design and how they're drawn. Zones and areas of the like are usually monochromatic, one color defining an area, while the inhabitants of it are still colorless. The music by alias Conrad Coldwood, ACC, ranges from melancholic ambience and the likes of the beautifully named Desperately Safe, to absolute jammies such as Pepper Steak, a song that may even be more well known than the game itself, to even absolute industrial slappers giving me some Silent Hill 1 vibes that I absolutely love. The endless hallway fight theme is dope, and I am so sad that nobody likes it to the point that it wasn't even part of the OST. Noise music is awesome. One of my favorite songs has to be Stay in Your Coma, which is the Game Over song, which honestly most people probably never even heard when they played this game. But despite that kind of music and this kind of art, I don't think I'd call Off a horror game. I think it stands as something much more of its own. But despite that, it has the atmosphere amazing horror games are known for. All this combined creates areas that even after years I'll never forget, despite looking so simple. It really creates this special game unlike anything else in some ways. And maybe the reason I'm spending so much time on these aspects of the game is because I think they're what makes Off what it is. I feel like when people remember Off, they remember the visuals, the music, the atmosphere. They remember the world even when separated from the plot. It's beautiful. But then I remember that this game has gameplay. And I know what you're thinking, Spacey. Be gentle. Hey, I'm not good at taking requests, but I'll try. I'd say that when it comes to people and Off, the gameplay portion, particularly the battles, ends up being the biggest turn off. Come on, give it up. That was good. That was a good one.
Yeah, that was a good one, Spacey. Not bad, not bad.
Oh, come on, you know me. Like most JRPGs, gameplay is split between overworld exploration and a battle system. The overworld exploration is totally fine. In fact, I'd even say it's pretty good. Mondes mentioned games like Myst to be the inspiration for the puzzles that are much more like riddles. Even the likes of exploring certain areas can be like puzzles, and I think that's really interesting. This is the kind of game that really expects you to be taking notes, even drawing pictures. I think that's really cool. It's definitely a lot more engaging and interesting than stuff like a rock pushing puzzle, you know? Hey, why are you showing footage of my game? Cut that, cut that! Off does it too! While there are puzzles that repeat certain concepts, a lot of them enforce the idea of studying different pictures, thinking of how to be creative by using knowledge learned about the world, and applying it. And yeah, while there were a few that I didn't really care for, they were still mostly unique, and required some sort of brain power, yeah? In the end, I'd rather take something that tries to be interesting and unique, even if it ends up being flawed, rather than something that's bog standard, which, bog standard, may be a pretty good way to describe the battle system of Off. Battles can be started from random encounters and on-screen encounters. It's kind of just dependent on the situation. There's a lot of puzzles that require backtracking through an area or screen, all the while getting jumped by random encounters. If you know me, I'm definitely not a fan of the random encounters while trying to solve a puzzle. I think that's a sin of a genre. I find it funny that this game opens up with a tutorial on how the combat system works. Maybe it's because I've been playing RPGs for a while, but I don't think this battle system is very complicated. Off was made in rpgmaker 2003, which default battle system was ATB. In fact, from what I read, 2K3 could only do ATB, which is weird. For those hovering over the dislike button wondering what the hell an ATB is, let me explain. Known as active time battle, ATB makes it so character actions can only be made once a bar next to their name fills up. This goes for the enemies too, but their bars are invisible. This can make for a more dynamic battle system rather than the typical choose all your commands beforehand then watch as speed decides who goes first. In some ways you can really say it puts an emphasis on the speed stat. I've played ATB games where I've gotten characters so fast that they could do double turns. Not like there's much you can do to influence stats in this game, but okay. So one thing about this game that in some ways I kind of like, and maybe the only thing I like about the battle system, is that it is just so fast paced. It's like playing a Final Fantasy game at double speed. One of the settings in the options is to turn on the ATB system from wait to active, which makes it so everybody's ATB gauge still moves while you're giving commands. And what this creates is this insanely fast-paced battle system. Like, look at the rapid speed of these gauges filling up. There's no time to think, just go. Because of this, I was spending most of my time looking down here than at the actual battle screen. Enemies attack so fast that you'll look up for 1 second only to look down to see that your whole party is poisoned and near death. This game basically forces you to end battles quick. Even some of the endgame bosses took me like a couple minutes to beat. I don't know, I just think that's kind of cool. I never quite played a game this speedy. But yeah, that's basically all the nice stuff I have to say about the battle system. It ends fast. But there's an astronomical amount of problems surrounding it. All battles amount to are dexterity checks of spamming the same skills over and over. There's no real depth to it. The best party member in the game is the one that has the strong offensive spells. Healing spells are useless because you have items, and quite frankly the game is so easy you should never die. Mondes wasn't lying when he said the first fight in the game was the hardest. Besides the secretary fights, those guys are a challenge, but nearly all challenge can be negated thanks to one thing. Remember how I said the battles are so rapidly paced? Well, that means poison is constantly taking large chunks of your health. It is actually insane how deadly poison is too. I'm not sure if there is a single enemy that resists poison. I was poisoning in-game bosses and they fell within minutes. And maybe that's a good thing, because while Off's combat is standard, it is so unfun, even for how short it is. The funnest part is seeing the cool designs of the enemies. I do like how some of them move around, but there's just so much that kind of reeks of not being very familiar with the genre. For one, stats and equipment. I know, this one's personal. There are 4 stats in this game, not including HP and MP, attack, defense, S-Spirit, and agility. Every equipment upgrade ends up raising a stat by like 3 or 4. It feels so insignificant. But here's the kicker, I don't even think the attack stat matters. I mean, if all you do is use skills, then surely the S-Spirit stat matters the most. But barely anything raises speed or S-Spirit. I mean, E-Spirit is the magic attack stat, right? But then I read somewhere that E-Spirit is just a stat that affects damage variance. But then you get a support party member that raises stats like attack, defense, and intelligence? I don't quite see that one here. I know the batter's home run skills are physical because they miss so much. Mortis Ghost said he played the Mother series after creating Off, which is pretty surprising because I'm getting some Nest vibes with this baseball bat hit rate. I think the biggest contributor to why this game's combat is so dull is because of the thing known as threat levels. It's the idea of some enemies being more threatening than others, so combat scenarios will have the player choose which enemies are more threatening to them to take out first, like taking out the enemy that is healing others and the such. But enemies attack so fast here, I'm not even sure whose skill does what and what that skill does. I sure know the names don't help. The best this got were these enemies here at the beginning of the game that could take your CP, but that's really it. And you could probably win most encounters just by spamming normal attacks anyways. Another strange thing is that the row system is still here. Typically in Final Fantasy you can change what row your party member is in to give them more defense at the cost of offense, good for support characters. But I don't even know if it functions here. The game never brings it up, not even in the tutorial, but it does visually move your characters in battle, so I don't know. ATB itself is rather finicky. I haven't played too many ATB system RPGs to be able to correctly recall, but rpgmaker 2K3 had the reoccurring stumble where your inputs can get eaten by enemy attacks animations playing, pausing the game. Maybe this was because I wasn't playing on waiting, but Off's rapid speed caused this to happen often enough to become uncomfortable. I haven't played too many rpgmaker 2K3 games with battle systems, but the ones I had still had this stumble, but these were a lot more balanced that I could get used to them. The games weren't moving faster than comprehension. I have nothing against ATB systems, case in point Mother Cognitive Dissonance, another rpgmaker 2003 game that was first released not even a year after Off. Yet the difference here is that Cognitive Dissonance is my favorite game ever made, and I think the gameplay is handled really well to be something that stands above the works it was based off of and on its own, in its own game. In Off, the gameplay doesn't stand on its own. It seems purposefully treated more as a minigame, something that helps explain the story. There's a whole element system as well, alongside scanning enemies, but only the batter gets elemental skills and they take so long to get it doesn't even matter. But these elemental skills are kind of why I don't really care to harp upon the gameplay of Off. It's the same with weird attack names and hard to differentiate enemies. It all ties into the story and the world. This isn't supposed to be some deep, rich gameplay with team building and strategy. Its purpose is just to supplement the narrative, to show the batter fighting the enemies. Battles are more like interactive cutscenes to let the player know that the batter is going around killing these specters. It'd be kind of weird if it was just playing out in cutscenes you had no control over. And maybe this is giving too much credit, but I do believe there's an intention here of the fights being easy just to show how powerful the batter is. By the end game, I had thousands of health and enemies were doing like 80 to 100 damage to me. The batter is the real threat, and if the gameplay shows anything, it's that he's good at his job. Which is why I didn't want to complain about the gameplay. Everyone does. But Off may have painted the idea of the generic RPG Maker gameplay, which isn't true when there are so many games out there doing incredible things with it. It's just here for the story, which isn't an excuse for it, because let's be honest, it's still pretty boring. But maybe if it not getting too much focus allows us to get everything else Off, well, offers, then I guess I can just let it pass. But it's just not something I'm ever going to appreciate. Okay, are we done with the gameplay stuff? So when it comes to Off, the story is very interesting, and maybe genius in some ways. I'm going to go down with the full story summary and my thoughts on certain things, and then give my thoughts on the story overall. I like to believe that checking out Mortis Ghost's later works has really changed my perspective on the world of Off. I'll explain why later, but it definitely changed my mind and made me reflect on how people see media in general. I guess the surprising thing is how differently I feel I see Off when compared to other people. But if you don't want to be spoiled, I suggest you get off this video. Hey, that was a good one. Come on, give it up. Give it up.
You got me, Spacey. That one was pretty good.
Oh yeah, come on. You know me. Come on. Wow, I sure hope I put some content after the spoiler marks so skipping it doesn't just lead you to the end of the video. The game begins by asking for your name, because believe it or not, the player is a character too. We are told we are controlling an entity known as the Batter, who is on a mission, and we gotta help him. We are then transported to an area known as Zone 0, where we are where the batter tells us how to control him. And if you're curious, yes, I'm on the side that the batter has 4 eyes. Even if Mondes Ghost says he only has 2, darn it. Walking a couple steps forward, I'm reminded why I love ambience in games as this cat walks towards us, hitting us with one of the first pieces of dialogue in the game. There cannot be any living beings in Zone 0, hence I deduce that you are a pure figment of my imagination. Beautiful. This is the judge, and he's here to help. We all get to introduce each other while the batter states his sacred mission we are helping him with, to purify the world. Zone 0 is basically a tutorial and doesn't really have much going on from a story perspective, but I do like how the judge speeds away after dialogue. It's not too long after we find a red music box that will teleport us back to Nothingness, where the batter was before we brought him to Zone 0. Nothingness is basically the world map, allowing you access between all the zones, but you can't visit later zones until you get a special card to enter them, so it's still linear. So now that we finished Zone 0, we go to Zone 1, where the game really begins. Zone 1 is rainy and green. It's where we get to meet the most common inhabitants of this world, the Elsen. The Elsen are rather anxious and scared people, always seemingly afraid or worried about something. During the beginning of Zone 1, we are told the purpose of how the zone functions through these dictionary pictures. It describes one of several essential elements, and how the people in the zone work. For example, the people here extract metal from the mines to free up the trapped smoke so that they can breathe, with smoke being the element brought up. This also goes into battles, where the elements are the in-universe ones, such as smoke. It is also stated that smoke is the first among 4 essential elements. Reading the dialogue here is where I can really appreciate the batter as a character. He's a very straightforward and simple man. He's as blunt as the bat he carries. His responses to others end up being very to the point and showcases his one interest, to purify the world. We learn that apparently the mines here are full of specters, which is the batter's #1 enemy, and luckily we're told that apparently the leader of the specters is just down here. Alright, cool. But joke's on us, it turns out to just be a donut. These are known as add-ons. They are these simple circles that help you out during battles, being your party members. The first one you get, Alpha, also happens to be the best party member in the game by far, having strong attacks and the ability to poison, and we know how busted that is. But yeah, we're gonna have to go deeper into the mines to get some ghost hunting done. It's here we get our first forced encounter, where the batter delivers some killer lines. I only brought up this first fight because it's actually the hardest fight in the game, which is pretty funny. One interesting reoccurring trend in this game is that whenever you see a switch, you're never flipping it on, you're always switching it to off. In some ways it kind of gives me the vibes that you're shutting this world down. Upon leaving the mines we reach Pinto, where the element of metal is made. Metal being the element that makes up the ground that people walk on, with smoke being the element that people use to breathe. This is of course obtained by cutting livestock into 2 and extracting the metal from it. This makes metal the first among 4 essential elements. Yeah, okay, so there's some specters in a cowshed we have to go take care of. Oh my god, was that dopefish? So we go into the shed and we clear house, but upon leaving, we see a man known as Didon talking to an Elsen. Didon is kind of a jerk, he shatters my ears, and I guess people think he's hot. Yeah, I didn't bring this up, but basically every character but the batter has a sound that plays with them when they talk. He gets all pissed off at the batter for fighting the specters. I think there are people who actually like Didon and say he's a good guy, in which case you should probably quit your job because people shouldn't treat other people like this. Didon dips before we can beat him up. I really do love the batter's dialogue. I don't know what it is, but it's just so sharp, and it tells a lot about his character. Also love how he immediately calls Didon a specter. The battle vows to destroy Didon and calls him evil, while learning he's somewhere called Alma. On the way we come across Zachary, a toad-masked man with a thicky neck. He's the merchant of the game, but his character kind of revolves around breaking the 4th wall, like he knows he's in a video game. I'm not sure if you know, but the fandom loves this character. We end up at the plastic administrations of Shashihata. Plastic ends up being the thing that makes up the lakes and the oceans of this world, alongside various other objects, making it the first of 4 essential elements. Because without plastic the world would be limitless, and people would keep walking and walking without ever stopping. Cool. One thing I wanted to correct myself on from my original playthrough is being honest with a lot of the puzzles, instead of just looking up guides. This one puzzle is the exception though, because I got stuck for like 30 minutes. I'm big dummy. It's here we encounter a panicked Elson, transforming into a burnt. Elson end up turning into enemies known as burnt after experiencing emotional stress. After a pretty neat notepad puzzle, we run into Didon, who is taking out some specters and H'ing about. He blames the batter for the appearance of the specters and says that if they meet again, hands are gonna be thrown. For one reason or another, we can now take the tram to Alma, so let's slide. Arriving in Alma, we immediately get roadblocked by a pretty cool puzzle revolving around answering questions based off these 3 pictures. We learn about the meat element here, which is stated to be the first of 4 essential— wait, what? They can't all be first, right? It's here we get attacked by a lot more Elson, who are stressed from the overwork that Didon is forcing on them. You know, one thing I can say about Zone 1 is that you definitely get to visit a lot more areas, especially when compared to Zone 2. Like, looking back, I'm surprised this is all Zone 1. But it's time to end it. With a final confrontation with Didon, he fulfills his promise of a battle and a fight begins. I'm not lying when I say I basically just spammed the same skill for like 4 minutes. With the Guardian of Zone 1 dead, purified, the zone is thusly purified as well. We get a brief glimpse of this kid in a red room, before being taken back to the world map. Wait, if Zone 1 has been purified, I wonder what it looks like now when we visit it. Yeah, the zone is basically empty, colorless. There's only one type of enemy here, known as secretaries, and they are super strong. I even game overed, yes, in off. I know. Feel free to laugh at me, I deserve it. The main reason to visit the purified zones is for items and experience, but this is off, so... well, you do get items that contribute to a secret ending, so that's cool, I guess. Alright, so the neat thing about me giving a pretty thorough explanation of Zone 1 is that I basically just described the other zones too. Enter a zone, meet the Elson, do some puzzles, recruit the elliptical tool icon to your party, find the zone boss, beat the zone boss, purify the zone, oh god what happened. So we're going to pick up the speed with the rest of this summary. Zone 2 is my favorite portion of the game. It mostly centers around this single building, the library, and you're going to be needing some smarts to get through this. Even navigating it is a puzzle, being able to travel to the north, east, south, and west sides of the library, yet all sides look the same. The only telling factor of which side you're on being this symbol here, that you have to read about to even understand. Exploring the library, we encounter a cat. Not the judge though, but Jaffe. He claims to be the guardian of Zone 2, leader of the Spectres, and he's dead set on getting revenge on everyone here. We proceed to beat him up, but he H's up a storm and teleports away. It's here we get our next O of destruction, Omega. Omega sucks. Yeah. Sorry to any Omega stands watching, but this chakram isn't packing heat. It specializes in healing status effects, but you can just accomplish that job with super cheap items. Other than that, its attack skills are kinda whack. For most of the game you'll just be doing one that does random damage, and the one that you get later that ignores defense isn't that strong either. Unable to progress, we leave the library, encountering the judge. He tells us to go to the mall, where he then asks us if we have seen his brother, Valerie, who may just be at the top of this library. Anyone want to tell him? We screw about at the carnival for a bit. I don't know why, but this place was always so memorable to me. Maybe it's the roller coaster part. I really like the puzzle here, using the information about Zachary in order to get proof to pass an area. We then head downtown to see the cat from earlier, Jaffe, ready to enact his revenge on his people. But everyone kind of ignores him. He gets pissed off and summons his specters at the Elson, but luckily we're here to save them, and even purify some of them. After all that, we decide it's time to take this cat out by heading towards the library's roof. The judge is here to confirm that Valerie is the cat who has gone mad and calls himself Jaffe. So let's go. Whale. On the balcony of the library, you can get a random encounter against this whale. And you know, it never really dawned on me until I beat this game. But hey, that's actually kind of weird. That ain't no specter. But the visual of this baseball player squaring up with a floating whale on a balcony is undoubtedly pretty cool. One thing that we have been learning about so far is this character known as the Queen. She gets brought up several times as this mysterious figure that nobody really knows too much about, but seems to be really powerful. Upon reaching the rooftop where Jaffe resides, the truth is revealed. Jaffe truly is the guardian of Zone 2, being a bird that had been eaten by Valerie, who was too nice to chew him up. Jaffe decided to take control of the cat's body. The judge is saddened by this and wants his brother back. The batter is just like, whatever, die. And here we go. This may not be obvious, but Jaffe is my favorite character in the game. He's cited several times as being this really nice person, and I believe he is. But he's underestimated due to being a small, harmless bird, even to the point of being eaten by a cat, in which then his own people don't even listen to them. While the people of Zone 1 attacked because they are stressed due to being overworked by Dedan, the people here have been living for years of safety that they become afraid of everything. Like, these people are afraid of roller coasters that don't even move. And it's this fear that has caused them to become selfish, protecting themselves over others, and overall being real jerks. You kind of get the sense that they're the real villains of this zone. Jaffe has done so much work to protect them, but ultimately gets ignored, leaving a bunch of paranoid individuals that can't do anything, which has caused Jaffe in response to go insane and start this revenge-fueled quest. Out of all the zone guardians in this game, he's the only one that seemed to actually care about his people, and is honestly probably the nicest character in this game. And yeah, that is kinda messed up, but hey, Valerie tried to kill him first, right? We slay Jaffe, purifying him. I mean, well, I guess he's purified. The zone gets purified as well. We once again see the kid in the red room, who seems to be aware of the zone guardians being defeated. Upon revisiting the purified Zone 2, we can find the judge on the roof of the library, crying out for his brother. Alright, time for Zone 3. This is my least favorite part of the game. I don't really find the factory imaging very interesting, and god dang it, it's rant time. The first puzzle here is whack, whack, whack. Cool idea, you arrive in this mess hall, and using this drawing, you have to travel all these routes, black, orange, and green. You learn that you have to do it in numerical order, 1, 2, 3. Stepping out of the set path forces an encounter that will kick you out of the building. The boxes on the drawing don't really match up to the ones on the actual maps, likely due to how rpgmaker's tile sets work, but maybe it was never intentional to begin with. So while the black route is obvious, you may be wondering about the others. Well, in a really clever move, you can cross over from 5 on the black route to 6 on the brown route. This teaches the player that they can cross from route to route as long as it's a straight path and still follows the numerical order. So with that in mind, how the hell do you get to the green route? There's only one entrance here, and it wouldn't make sense to cross from 1 to 1, so... Oh, this 7 here on the brown route is kind of unnecessary, isn't it? What if... Bingo. Sneaky. Alright, let's do it, and it's wrong. Well, that's weird. I was doing something I found out earlier and thought it was a rule of the puzzle, but now I'm being punished for it? So how do we reach that leftmost green path? Surely it's not traveling from black one to green one, because that's not how you count, and it is. I don't get it. Like, am I missing something? This is really bad. Maybe the elves in here are giving out some sort of hint towards this, but this is off dialogue, man. I don't understand half the things you're saying. You don't count 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. You count 1, 2, 3, 4. I declare a dumb war, and I'm declaring war on this puzzle. I know what you're thinking, Spacey. Why didn't you just try going from black one to green one earlier? It's kind of obvious. And you know what? You're obvious. How about that? This has to be a mistake. I didn't watch all the 10th anniversary off stream, which I'll get to later, but I went to this part and he did not seem to comment on how weird that is. Maybe it has something to do with the green text here? I don't know. All I know is that if there is something obvious here, I'll probably get corrected about it to the end of time. Okay, so story-wise, we run into Zachary, now with a cat mask. He says that Pablo, the name of the judge, isn't doing too well after, well, that. So he's taken over as both a guide and a salesman.
No.
We find a lot of Elson who, contrasting to Zone 2, aren't afraid of the specters, even calling them friends. These Elson seem to be very calm, friendly, and actually enjoying being alive. The batter finds this to be odd, and decides to ask Zachy what's going on. But before that, we got our final party member, Epsilon. we go.
Spacey, what the hell are you doing?
Yes! A good half of Epsilon's skills are single target buffs, so you might be thinking it's useless, which yeah, half of the skills are, but it makes up for being the only party member that can attack everyone. Sure, the attack isn't strong, but it's really nice to have. Travel in the zone is through this monorail system. I find it very interesting that there's this whole map animation that pops up when traveling. It comes off as very unnecessary and pointless, but for reasons I'll get into later, I think it's kind of essential to understanding off. Through exploration and mindless switch flipping puzzles, I hope you understand why I'm not a fan of this zone, we go through multiple factories where we learn why the Elston are acting this way. We encounter Elston in a room full of a white substance, fending off ghouls from it and actually succeeding. Not before attacking us though. This substance is known as sugar. Whatever it is, it really seems to rile up the Elston. It's like a drug. Even a lot of the Elstons have larger eyes, which could be compared to dilated pupils, an effect typically seen in some drugs as a side effect. After climbing a factory pipe and playing an extremely random minigame, we reach the sugar ovens. This is where we learn the truth of the matter. Sugar is revealed to be a so-called secret fifth element, one that is necessary to bear reality. Yet unlike the others, it comes off as rather fabricated. It is created using the corpses of other Elston, and through factory treatment it is fully realized into sugar, given to workers as a reward for their hard day at work. I apologize for potentially forcing my view on the matter of the plot for this, as I want to refrain from putting too much of my interpretation here to keep the summary general, but this seems rather obvious, and in the way that sugar seems very similar to a sort of dopamine increasing drug, but it could also be compared to something which gives caffeine, anything addictive. The way the Elston become burnt in this world is by suffering from withdrawal, seemingly losing full control of themselves from having a lack of sugar, something that they never needed in the first place. We learn that the person behind this all is the director, and very likely the leader of this zone. Interestingly enough, while heading to confront the director, Zachary shows up to tell us about the sugar, before the batter lets him know that we've already been told beforehand. I don't know why, but I find that interesting. Nearing the end of the zone, we reach some sort of office building where the director is. Tons of Elston live here, and with halls of locked rooms strewn about. The Elston that are here are way too far gone, attacking the player on sight. Whoever is the leader of this zone has managed to do a far worse job than Dedan and Jaffe could have ever done. This can be seen by the numerous signs telling us to turn back on our way to meet the director, even a cheeky puzzle to try and block us off. But after passing all this, we meet the guardian of this zone, Enoch. He comes off as very enigmatic and selfish, showing he doesn't even trust the queen, a figure brought up several times as the ruler of this world. His demeanor seems to be one of warming happiness, yet his true nature reveals a much colder person. He calls himself a god, and seems to truly believe that the way he runs this zone is something that can and will work for a long period of time. Meanwhile, he sits locked away in his room while his people are in hell. He prides himself with how he runs his immoral world, in the end only bothering to think for himself. In comparison, he seems to make Jaffe and even Dedan look good. If you have a negative opinion on the batter after seeing what he has done to the previous two zones, you may now be finding yourself siding with him in this situation. Enoch reveals himself to be too powerful at first, causing us to run for our lives through halls now purified. He ends up chasing us to the monorail, where he is now tired and stuck, leaving him vulnerable for the true battle. This fight is unique as it is the only one that displays from this perspective, using these unique sprites just for this instance. This is what I mean when I say that the fights are more made to supplement the story. These sprites were made specifically for this one scene to show off Enoch's intimidating and overwhelming size. It just so happens that we also get to do battle here. As always, the batter wins, managing to even decapitate Enoch with a baseball bat. Maybe it was one of the add-ons, they might be quite sharp. Enoch criticizes the batter for what he is doing, saying everyone in this zone will fade into nothingness thanks to his purification. The batter seems to ignore this, simply stating to Enoch that this zone is now purified.
Alright, let's just head on to... Oh, snap! A comet! Ooh, where is it going? Oh, shoot! Earth! Move! Move out of the way! Oh! Oh.
With the 3 main zones purified, you may be wondering what's left. There is one more spot on the world map, known as the Room. This is the endgame. I know what you're thinking, but Spacey. And you know what? I was actually thinking that myself. So by collecting special items in the 3 purified zones, we can return to Zone 0, where we will find a newly revealed hallway. It is here we find a distressed woman surrounded by sugar. Her words don't entirely make sense and she attacks the batter. This is Sucre, but she is commonly known as Sugar. The battle theme that plays here might actually be my favorite battle theme in this game that isn't unused. Unfortunately, there is some bug with the audio so that the full song never plays, which is a shame. This is the hardest battle in the game, with Sugar having some of the highest stats and the strongest attacks in the game. You may not realize this, however, after she falls in 3 minutes later after you poison her and proceed to do nothing. I won this fight with ease, which is odd considering the secretaries I was fighting 10 minutes ago almost gave me a game over. In her dying words, she refers to the batter as a big scary ducky and requests to tell Zachary that she says goodbye, with the batter rather speechless over this defeated foe. Her body doesn't even disappear, it just remains there. So much for purification. You can find Zachary for the first time here in Zone 0, completely silent, not even playing his usual laughing dialogue sound. It is time for us to face the endgame and head towards the Room. The Room is where things simultaneously get really cool, sorta confusing, and where you will either understand the plot or just not. Like, just starting out, we get a chapter introduction screen. What, we're on chapters now? And we're on chapter 5? What about the other ones? The room as an area constantly changes and warps, but a few consistent rooms you see is that of a bedroom and a hall leading towards it. This is assumedly the room of the kid in the red room that we have been seeing, where we can read notes from his dots, such as how his father gave him a comic and told him to take pills to help with an illness. The room is very much so a place where a lot of cool things happen, and you kinda just need to play the game yourself to truly experience it. As we move on, we begin to descend the chapters. Chapter 4 might be where the entirety of this game will make sense to you, or not. I know when I first played the game none of this made sense to me, but leaving the kids' room, we arrive on some distorted map with 5 different places to go. 4 of these places represent a character previously met or mentioned. Let's start out with the Tall Mister. You'll notice immediately that the appearance of these areas are unlike anything else in this game. It almost feels like being warped into a different game entirely. Entering this building, we meet Dedan. Just his first line makes it very clear that we're on the remains of an apocalyptic Earth. The way he talks makes it seem as such that he is not speaking to the batter, but rather the kid in the red room. He wants some help and asks for a calendar to find out the day. After doing so, he mentions that the kid's mother will be back soon, and when she comes back, the world will restart, and they will be able to build it with their own hands. He gives us a book and a Wednesday, and we'll be on our way. You'll notice by the text that this is a much different version of the Dedan that we're used to, either showing that he's just aggressive around his workers to help keep the world working, or the creation of the zones have turned him to a crappy person. But then again, either way, he's still a crappy person. But I guess he might be hot. The Wednesday that he gives us is an equipable item that makes the user resist damaging floors, and it is useful in a total of 2 rooms, and in one you can just dodge the damaging tiles anyways, so I'm just kind of confused. Leaving the Tall Mister, we decide to visit the bird. This is Jaffe, but quite unlike how we've ever seen him before, considering he's not being eaten by a cat. He seems interested in the book that Dedan gave us, but that's about it. So going back to the world map, we go to the big mister. It's Enoch, and he's stuck in a pit. If we find someone to help him out, he says he'll bake a cake for us. Heading back to Jaffe, we give him the book in exchange for helping out with Enoch. Super neat! Jaffe and the bird squad do just that, and everyone meets up at the Tall Mister's cottage. Must be a very tall cottage. The 3 thank the kid for helping them, as they talk about the worlds they plan on creating. Jaffe stating he wants universal happiness. Dedan planning a country where everyone works in harmony. Enoch thinking about being a terrible person. I mean, ideally having good intentions by wishing others joy at any time, even if that joy might be from an addictive substance. Yay! I like this line here from Jaffe, stating that these words are the first stars of light in this shade of the world. What a good translation. Everyone seems pretty hopeful upon this new creation of these worlds. So going back to the world map, you'll remember that I said that there were 5 spots to go to, the room included. So that leads us to the only one that we haven't been to yet, the sun in the top right corner, Mama. We hear the kid saying that Papa left, and that he never liked him anyways, and hopes that his mother can come back. The kid tells his mama about the 3 friends he made today, each one being represented by an add-on. We then arrive back into the beginning of the room, starting chapter 3. And now we're at the title screen. All we can do here is continue. 3 saves appear, but these aren't our saves. But going on each one causes a different version of the room to go through, and the player has to jump between the saves to find out where to go. So this part is mostly gameplay and puzzles, some pretty cool puzzles at that. But there is some interesting stuff here, such as the kid's room looking more like a jail cell, as if he feels trapped in there. And also some pretty chunky ghosts that I'm quite a fan of, not gonna lie. Another example of some really cool art only utilized in one area here is after you solve the 3 saves. You see this effect of the upside down batter flipping right side up. And it's so cool because each of these sprite changes are entirely different sprite sheets, and it's only ever used in this one room to produce this one effect. God, I love that. Now with the save file conundrum done, we enter chapter 2, Boxer's Adventures. We enter the kid's room to find the comic book that his dad gave him, Panic in Ballville, a story about a man known as the Boxer in a place known as Ballville. He seems to be living a chill and peaceful day, that is, until the evil ball man, a man in a baseball uniform, shows up. He states that he has cloned his evil self all across Ballville, and also kidnapped the Boxer's girlfriend. Oh no, maybe it isn't such a good day after all. It's honestly at these points of this video, I wonder how well you guys are keeping up with what's happening, because this is really just what happens with this game. We're now the powerful Boxer, beating up the evil Ballman clones to some jamming chiptune slappies. Notably, the battle theme here is a sort of chiptune version of the final boss song, which we haven't even heard yet. This game kinda does that a lot. There's quite a few songs that are remixes of other songs in the game. Something really interesting to note here is that the enemies are on the right side of the screen. I'm pretty sure this is the only time this ever happens, and with the villains here being the men dressed in baseball uniforms, well, just as the situation seems dire for our hero Boxman, the batter closes the book and calls it stupid. Hey, wake up, we're nearing the final boss. Zachary tells us to make some final preparations because we're about to face the Queen, and he reveals the only shop within the game that has some surprisingly expensive gear that I couldn't actually buy. It's a nice twist that kinda caught me off guard. But once again, through that door, it's the Queen, and we're going to have to face her. Chapter 1, the Queen. I don't know why I said that out loud, you can just read it. I don't know why, but the music here always reminds me of Boards of Canada. We confront the Queen, who has been waiting for us, the batter. She tells us to go home, to which the batter replies he is home, stating this is the home of his father. The way the dialogue is presented here is almost as if you're reading a book. Like at this point the player has lost control of what's happening and they can only spectate, unable to change what is happening. The batter states he has purified the zones and that there is nothing now. When asked why, the batter states that it's because the Queen failed to take care of him, the kid. And because of this, he must fulfill his sacred mission. The Queen counters that everything she has done was for the kid, with the batter responding that she lost her focus on the kid and forgot about him while doing so. The Queen states that she will protect the son that brought them both to this world, and the battle begins. This battle shows a bit of cool story here, as the Queen has her own 3 add-ons, Delta, Sigma, and Epsilon. The Queen, being a creator, has add-ons that are differently shaped with more unconventional and spectacular designs. Compare this to the batter, a simple plain man, with his add-ons reflecting that. Throughout the fight, the Queen berates the batter with several lines. I probably didn't get them all because I poisoned her and the fight ended in about 2 minutes. The Queen begins to fade out, dialogue becoming erratic. I'm not quite sure if the "my love" is referring to the batter here, or words that the kid's mother would say to the father. The batter states the failure that they have all experienced. Look, he has your eyes. However, his show fear. The room is now the red that we remember it for, almost as if it is a zone on its own, having a monochromatic color scheme. Chapter 0, the batter. We march towards the kid's room, who says nothing. only coughing as the battle begins. Scanning reveals this kid to be named Hugo. And now, the room has been purified. The batter makes his way down a hall to a final switch, but he is stopped by Pablo. The judge is angered by the actions of the batter and feels betrayed by the player, blaming us for killing the queen and Hugo out of our own curiosity to see where the plot is heading next. We didn't purify the world, we destroyed it. The judge regrets his actions in helping the batter and asks the player to join his side. And yes, this leads to a final choice of who you want to side with. There is something so cool about this. You spent all this time doing these things with this character, and at the very end, after reflecting on it all, you can choose to stab them in the back, turn against a protagonist that you no longer like. I feel like the one thing that kind of kills this ending is that the batter ending is marked as official while the judge ending is marked as special. This makes the judge ending feel not as canon, not the true ending. Maybe it was set up for the sequel that never was, but I believe both endings could be canon. It's all up to the player. Choosing the batter ending causes the batter to fight the judge, mirroring the first tutorial battle, but this time it is to kill. The fight is easy, the judge never stood a chance. Escaping from your purpose is impossible. Judy Garland Somewhere Over the Rainbow hauntingly plays over the credits scene as the world is gone. And that's it. Choosing the judge lets us control the judge. He spitefully states that our judgment on the battle is pointless as the world has already been destroyed, and that this is just for the satisfaction of not letting the job get done. The judge has his own skills and stats here. The batter's true form is also revealed here as well, being a monstrous duck-like creature, something referenced by Sugar. Perhaps our characters always saw him. Oddly enough, his add-ons aren't here. Even though the judge has a poison skill, this fight is still a little tough, and losing it causes the batter ending to play regardless. But it is still a fast fight, as if the player, us, has the power to make anyone strong enough to win, and that maybe the batter couldn't have done or won any of these fights without us. The batter is defeated, the judge showing pride in stopping the very final part of his scheme. It's too late, everything is lost. I know, but I prefer this over your victory. Nothing remains now except for our regrets. The credits play as usual, except for scenes of the judge walking around a purified, empty world, forever stuck in non-existence. But yeah, that's my story summary of Off. But now let's get into the interesting part. So from what I've seen, a general consensus is that a lot of people view the batter as an evil person, and agree that the judge ending is better than the batter one. Well, personally, I think the batter is the good guy, and did the right thing. And I know, you're hovering over the dislike button. Sorry, Spacey, I'm gonna have to put you down. Flagging the video, reporting me, trying to get me off this site. I get it. Hey, put the holy water down. Let me explain. And by that, I mean, allow me to present my interpretation of Off's story. Keyword, interpretation. Off is a rather heavy interpretive piece of media. As such, there's a lot of ways to view it, and there is no intended correct way to do so. As such, my views aren't the correct one and should not be parroted or have any bearing on your thoughts of the game, other than just being a different perspective to think about. For example, I heavily believe in taking the world of Off as a literal one rather than a metaphorical one. This is just my opinion. I originally came to this review expecting to do a metaphorical analysis, like the batter represents a disease spreading across the body, with each of his own guardians being major organs and Hugo being the kid with the disease, finally dying or something like that. And there isn't anything wrong with seeing Off this way, but I personally find it to be disrespectful to the world on display. If there's anything I learned from reading Mondes' Ghost's other works, is that he values creating an interesting world. Take the map in Zone 3 that pointlessly shows up for a few seconds, or all the elements explaining how a world like this works. Mondes Ghost had the intention of creating a world that is heavily explained to make sense, but not at all in a way that is easy to understand due to concepts. When compared to our world, it's bizarre. Even I realized with my initial intention of looking at Off and how I would view the plot, that people tend to compare it to things they know when faced with things alien. The world of Off is weird, it's weird looking, its rules and elements are nonsensical, it sounds weird, the people talk strangely, and when people are confronted with things such as that, they may tend to see the media as something metaphorical, something with a deeper meaning or a life lesson, which I don't. I see a fascinating world built with care, holding characters that aren't representations of anything, rather than characters that just stand on their own. So with that in mind, here's my view on Off. It all starts with a kid named Hugo. His parents were rarely there for him, and while his father seemed to care more for him, he ultimately loved his mother more. Some event caused the end of the earth. Hugo, Dedan, Jaffe, and Enoch, seemingly being the only ones left, took it upon themselves to rebuild the world, creating zones they rule over. I don't know where the judge falls in with Zone 0, do your own math. Hugo creates the Queen and the Batter as representations for his father and mother, who died alongside the catastrophe that happened to the Earth. Being as the Batter is a representation of someone Hugo doesn't like, the Batter is kept in nothingness, while the worlds are built. Then, the player steps in, and using the player's power, the Batter enters Zone 0. It's said multiple times that the Queen may or may not have the power over the specters, and maybe the appearance of the Batter is influenced by that. The Batter is here to destroy this world, in order to end its suffering. This fabricated world built by these people have all failed in its own way. None of them are stable, and in the end, every Guardian is too focused on their own agendas to care for the dying kid that helped create it. As such, the Batter goes on a journey to basically mercy kill this world, so the suffering of its inhabitants, including the person who made him, doesn't have to last any longer. So in that case, I do side with the Batter. He generally seems to care for Hugo, and seems to be the only one that is level-headed enough to realize that this world was bound to fail, which makes me kinda sad when people think the Batter got corrupted, or that the Batter being evil is some twist ending. But Spacey, he's a giant monster, so he must be evil. 1, hey, I'm a monster, that's kinda mean, yeah? 2, have you seen anyone else in this world? Are you crazy? Nearly everyone is monstrous in some form. I'd say Scary Ducky Batter fits in better than the normal baseball guy. I like the Batter. I saw him like most people did on my first playthrough, but that was a long time ago. I see things clearer and differently now. I know this is kind of a basic explanation of my interpretation, but truthfully there's a few things that I just don't understand. Like Zachary slaying the Toad King and all that. Who's the Toad King? I don't know, go read some scuffed pages to try and understand that. What do you think this is, an analysis video? I guess in a lot of ways you can say my view on the story is as simple and straightforward as the Batter himself. I really don't see too many people that share my viewpoint, but maybe I'm not looking in the right place. But I think it's really impressive that a piece of media can be loved by so many, yet be so open to interpretation to the point where the main character can be viewed by one person as the villain and evil, while another person can view them as the good person and the hero.
But also just the existence of Big Pooh. Oh my god, yeah.
And it's now that I want to focus more on Mondes Ghost and the things surrounding Off. There was a puzzle I didn't mention in Zone 3, involving entering a code on a SNES controller. I was surprised to see that the Konami code didn't work, but more interesting, the solution is to be found in the FAQ section of the game's README. The FAQ is full of a lot of jokey filler questions, almost as if combing through these useless tidbits to find the answer you're here for is all part of the puzzle. Yet reading through this, we do find some interesting things, such as Off having a planned sequel, which Mondes joked later on the Off 10th anniversary stream that the stream itself was the sequel to Off. Another interesting note is the firm unencouragement of creating fan games and the like for Off, once again stating that Mondes Ghost originally had intentions to do more with the world of Off. While some of these FAQ questions can be taken as non-serious, I am to believe that these two are, considering during the anniversary stream, Mondes Ghost said he has yet to play an off-fan game, seemingly being uncomfortable at the idea of off-fan games, which is understandable, especially for an interpretive piece of media such as off. Creating fan work on it would undoubtedly involve forcing your theories and interpretations of characters as a presented fact. And while there might be a stigma telling you that fan games aren't canon, you would be surprised to find out that there are some crazy monsters out there that do take fan games as canon, being just as real as the other entries of a series. Of course, there are also some devs that don't even care, saying that any and all fan games of their work are canon. My example here also just so happens to be from a different popular rpgmaker series. It's like my life is a looping hellhole that revolves around this stuff, and I guess I just love it. I feel like the off 10th anniversary stream gives off such a fascinating insight into this. These are characters that, at the time of the stream, were a decade old to Mondes Ghost. Yet there were fans who had only recently gotten to off and loved the characters. There were multiple times where Mondes would uncaringly answer questions in a jokish tone relating to characters and the such, the exception being any questions revolving around the story, which he would mostly state is up to the player. There were even some questions that Mondes didn't even remember the answers to. He made this game like a decade ago. And I just think it's interesting because I really got the vibe of these super off fans asking all these questions about characters they cared about a lot more than Mondes Ghost does himself. Maybe these fans are just getting into off, but Mondes has well moved past on these characters, even stating he doesn't like the art in off, which considering it's over a decade old, he probably shouldn't. I greatly prefer Mondes' more recent work. I've actually shown a bit of it off here throughout this video, as he has drawn and done designs of these characters to be used as shirts and such on his Redbubble. Like, I'd be kinda down to wear this kind of stuff on a shirt. I feel like another factor of moving on is that at the time of the anniversary stream, Mondes Ghost was already working on a new project, a comic series known as Dr. Cataclysm. While the off anniversary stream is an optional viewing, I mean, I didn't watch it all, I'd say Dr. Cataclysm is required viewing. It's awesome. All in one place, free, readable online, and it's just good. I wasn't even halfway into it before I already started to like it more than off. The character designs, the non-linear story, the translated dialogue, it gives off such a charm and character that off didn't do as much, while still giving the kind of vibes that it did. Like, I could tell this was Mondes Ghost.